Hey, it's Aaron, and I'm gone today, but I can't leave the algorithm hanging. I mean, I hope you enjoy this best of the AM update, but the algorithms for places like Spotify and iTunes really hate it when I post consistently for months on end, and then there are days on end when there's nothing. So to that end, here's a best of the AM update. JD Vance spoke at the Munich Security Conference late last week in Germany. It's one of the best foreign policy speeches I have ever heard. It's about 20 minutes long. You should listen to the entire thing. This, in my opinion, is probably the best 3 minutes from that speech. Again, listen to this speech. JD Vance, I would like to stipulate something to you. Think about this while you listen to it. JD Vance is the this prominent political figure. You heard his voice earlier in today's episode. He is the antithesis of this prominent political figure. Listen to this.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizen suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
That is JD Vance, Vice President JD Vance, at the Munich Security Conference late last week in Germany, confronting to the faces of European leadership just how far they have fallen. All of these Eurotrash leaders who claim to be paragons of capital D democracy, being confronted with their own draconian, really dystopian policies when it comes to free speech. And here is JD Vance, the American, coming along and telling them off to their faces. I asked you before who JD Vance is the antithesis to. JD Vance is the anti-Barack Obama. Whereas Barack Obama spent the first year in office and really the entirety of his time in office apologizing for the United States over and over and over again. JD Vance comes in and his very first few weeks in office as vice president, not the head of state, as the vice president, repeatedly telling European leaders and really putting the entire world on notice, America is the leader. You will listen to us. You will come correct. And if you do not, as JD Vance said later on during his speech at the Munich Security Conference, if you do not, there's nothing we can do for you, because there's nothing you can do for yourselves. If you continue to treat each and every one of your citizens with supreme disdain and suspicion, there's nothing we can do for you, because there's nothing you can do for yourselves. JD Vance is the best political communicator since the great communicator, Ronald Reagan, and I do not think that's up for debate. He is better at articulating America first than Donald Trump is himself, and Donald Trump, I think, has gotten better at that as time has gone on. JD Vance is shaping up to be a generational talent. Whoever is writing his speeches is immensely talented as well, if it's not JD Vance himself. You need to listen to the entire speech, because JD Vance is the anti-Obama. He is the antithesis, the right side up of Obama's upside down. Man alive, it's incredible watching some of these developments play out that I just really never thought about 4 months ago. I never really thought we would see in our lifetimes. And here we are. We can do it. Good can happen. And JD Vance is just one example of that. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller at the White House press briefing room last week gave the media a much-needed civics lesson. Apparently, somebody asked him to explain the executive branch and executive powers as if they're 5 years old, so Stephen Miller obliged.
It is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers of the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
It's just that simple, folks. There's a nice little civics lesson as if we're 5 years old, which most of the media, I think, most of the mainstream media probably is. It's White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller explaining, in no uncertain terms, what it means when we talk about executive power in our system of government. If there's one word that I would sum up the Trump administration so far, the second Trump administration, it would be this: unapologetic. Unapologetic. You saw multiple examples of this. Just today, Donald Trump himself telling Maine's governor off to her face, protecting women's sports. That's righteous. That's unapologetic. That's awesome. Tom Homan speaking at CPAC, unapologetic for what he's trying to do. Securing the border and deporting bad guys. Unapologetic. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Yes, the president has the power to fire whoever he wants to within the federal government under his purview as the chief executive of the United States. Stephen Miller, you just heard a few moments ago. Unapologetic. No, spelling out, this is our system of government. If you don't like it, you should have voted differently. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, unapologetic. We're getting played here by Vladimir Zelensky. Unapologetic. It's unison across the board. The way they're dealing with the media, the way they're messaging a clear vision. There's no humana. No, there's no beating around the bush. There's no Attorney General Jeff Sessions responding to Trump, goading him on to doing more things and saying that's kind of hurtful. It's just unapologetic. And then the latest example unfolded over the weekend. Elon Musk has been persona non grata for the entire American left, for basically the entire duration of the second Trump administration thus far, as he leads efforts at Doge to uncover just rampant abuse of your tax dollars in the federal government. He has been persona non grata. He's been described as the shadow president. They were trying to drive a wedge between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That's not happening. In fact, over the weekend, Trump and Musk doubled down. Trump said in a post on Truth Social, Elon is doing a great job, but I would like to see him get more aggressive. Remember, we have a country to save, but ultimately to make greater than ever before. MAGA, Elon Musk on X, took a screenshot of that post on Truth Social and said, "Will do, Mr. President," just completely and totally unapologetic. I'm not sure about the extent to which this country can recover after what has been done to it, when 12 of the last 16 years of leadership was from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. But I can assure you, the path that we are on, at least from rhetoric and messaging perspective, using the bully pulpit effectively, the path that we're on, if we can actually save this country, the path has to look like what we're on right now. So again, if you're wondering why at this time last year I was a curmudgeon and so antagonistic towards Donald Trump, and why I am one of his biggest cheerleaders now, it's because of what we're saying here. It's because of what we're doing right now. If you cooked up a president, a reasonable president in the year 2025, if you cooked him up in a lab, this administration would not look much different from that idealistic president and administration. So again, I continue to be really, really optimistic. And by the way, Republicans in Congress would do well to follow this administration's example, and they better. More thoughts to close out today on Donald Trump's address to the joint session of Congress last night. 100 minutes long, very long speech, but it hit on all of the points, all of the things that really make America, America. Strength, bravery, persistence, boldness. Those are all qualities that made this nation what it is. He did it in his style, but this is not the same Donald Trump. This is the Donald Trump, I'd say 3.0. It was all of Donald Trump's personality, all of his ability to kind of turn a phrase and flick off and tick off people who don't like him very much, but without any of the douchiness. This was the most presidential version of Donald Trump I've ever seen, but it was still Donald Trump. It was still his signature brand and style. He's obviously, don't say old dogs can't learn new tricks. He's obviously improved just as a communicator through these now almost a decade in politics. So I said earlier, these are all, he not only embodied, or he not only articulated, he embodied by making dreams come true last night on multiple occasions. He not only articulated, but he embodied the spirit of Americanism, the spirit of America. This is still the land of opportunity. You have opportunities. You can succeed. You will succeed. You can be strong. You can be bold. Truth, justice, and the American way. That's basically what I would call that speech last night. So, proud to be an American this morning. But I don't understand. I really don't understand. Talking about the Democrats. I do understand. But it still blows my mind nonetheless. Al Green Al Green, congressman from Texas, I believe in Harris County, isn't that Houston? Al Green got up in the first 5 minutes, started waving his cane around and yelling at Donald Trump. It's all about me. That's basically what it is. It's all about me. Yelling about Trump being, I don't know. I couldn't tell. I don't care. Who thought that was a good idea? You just lost. You just got pantsed by this guy a few months ago. This is your first foray in the public eye? Yeah, Houston is in Harris County. I believe that DJ Daniel, that young kid with brain cancer, I believe he's from Houston. I don't know if Al Green is his congressman or not. But he got booted. I mean, how bad does it have to be when you made Mike Johnson look like a frickin' badass for tossing you out and calling on the sergeant of arms to get you out of there? But then the rest of the night, no clapping for tax cuts. No clapping for a kid who wanted to go to West Point, and then Donald Trump, the freaking commander-in-chief, informs him, hey, you've been accepted. Pack your bags. No clapping for kids with cancer. No clapping for standing up for women's sports. No clapping for God made you just the way and loves you just the way you are. You're perfect just the way you are. And you're a boy or a girl, and there's no changing that, and that's okay. No clapping for that. These people in the opposition, they're just broken. They need Jesus so bad, but they hate him and anything that he stands for. And I think it's just that simple. You know, Elise Slotkin, the senator from Michigan, came on to give the Democrat rebuttal, and she tried to talk about things like the economy. But towards the beginning of her rebuttal, she tried to talk about shared values that we're supposed to have, Democrats and Republicans. After her party couldn't even bring themselves to clap for anything except for one thing, Ukraine, a foreign country. These people can never have real power again. And I'm here to tell you this morning, after what we heard last night, after what we've seen in the first 6 weeks of the Trump administration, the second Trump administration, there ain't no going back. We are pot committed here on the side of truth, justice, and the American way. We have to see this through. Those people cannot have real power again. I don't care if it's Trump 2028, Frump 2028, Hump 2028. These people just cannot see real power again. They just can't. I'm McIntire, and you've listened to a best of the AM Update. I mean, why? Do you not have a life?